continuing on with another JayKay18 project, he wanted a internet InfoGlobe. So I says, okay, when things settle down in the software department, I says I'll be on the lookout for an InfoGlobe for you. So I asked him, I says, well, what color would you prefer? And I remember him saying in the past that, you know, he's always liked the green colored InfoGlobes. So I just happen to have one here that I found. So now we're going to take this standard Olympia InfoGlobe and we're going to turn it into a internet InfoGlobe. So I've already popped the shell off to save you the horror of opening these things. So we'll take the rotating arm off, and we'll be putting all brand new LEDs on there, and coming a little later. So our first little task is to put the guts in for the internet components. So we're going to be putting a ESP board in here, the 8266 Wi-Fi board. And of course, other little things. We'll be putting a buck converter to take the 9 volts and dropping it down to 5 volts. And we'll be severing the LED and putting a resistor in line with the ESP board so we don't fry the IR LED. So we'll get these little bits out of the way. So on a board here, we're going to be hacking into this little LED here that's just kind of like my InfoGlobe. It's just sort of hot glued to the side of the motor, which is not uncommon for this particular one. And then we'll be disconnecting this little LED too, because we don't need to have that blazing, because this don't need a battery mod for being an internet InfoGlobe. So every time this boots up, it's going to retrieve all the information that it needs. So like I said, this is a kind of like an afterthought of how Discovery Olympia put these IR LEDs in. They just, they didn't even put them in this one in a particular nice bracket. They just sort of like, whatever. So I'm going to have to kind of like contour this thing, because it's halfway off the board anyway. Really the only thing that's holding on there is the leads itself. So for the time being, I'll just leave that on there. Interesting thing here, it's got a little insulated jumper on there for whatever reason. So that's interesting. Definitely a unique, but I found other unique things on these things as the models have progressed and stuff like that. So we'll go ahead and start putting some parts on here. So we're going to be tapping into our power line here. So this is our ground, and this is our power in at 9 volts. So here's our little buck converter. So we'll put that in, and then we'll have to burn a hole in the bottom of this thing to let the wires out. So do that, and we can just pop a hole anywhere in here, really. So that'll be for our wires. So first we'll tap into some power here. So we'll get some wire. So that's that one. Make one for the black. And then before we put the wires down, we're going to be putting some diodes in. Because these little buck converters, they don't have any kind of backflow. So I've had wacky things happen. Even in other projects where I put them buck converters in and it's got a weird backflow in it. So we're going to be just using a standard Schottky diode here. Nothing special or fancy. So for our ground, of course the ground's going to be going back into the board, so we're going to have our little silver ring facing that direction. So if anything tries to come back out, it says, nope, sorry about your luck. Same thing with our power. So 10 them wires, leads. So put our little ground wire on. Put our little power line on. And then we'll have estimated wire, about that much. And we'll just fish these down through the hole. Fish this one down through the hole. Then we get a little wire tie. And we'll zip tie all this stuff together. So to take care of our power. Now we can hook up our board. So on our board here, we got an arrow. So this is our input, and that's our output. At the polarity right. Same thing with our ground. So now we need to set the voltage.
Already on auto mode. DC voltage. DC.
So we have our 9 volts coming in. So now we got to set our voltage going out. So we're about 7 off the bat. So now we drop it to 5.
DC 5.049 volt. DC 5.125 volt.
5.1 volts.
AC voltage.
So now the next thing I want to do
Capacitance diode measurement.
is find our ground, our common ground near the LED, the transmitting LED. So we got 1 to ground. So that's our common ground. Make sure there's no other grounds present. So that's our little spot. We're going to be using for ground, our new ground.
Is about to enter steady state.
So now it's time to sever the LED. So just for reference, I'm going to test the IR to make sure that I got the correct polarity. That thing's dead. That's nice. We'll do it the old-fashioned way.
Already on auto mode. DC AC capacitance diode measurement. .058 volt.
So the left side is positive. negative right side is ground.
About to enter steady state.
So for our ground leg to the board, we're going to be putting in this little resistor. So it's a 220. Then we're going to be putting a blob of solder down, or solder, where a little spot is. And we'll put our resistor in. So now I'll try to get some of this hot glue that's not doing anything off. So we're going to sever the LED. But actually I'm going to cut the whole thing right off the board because I'm going to configure these wires and then re-glue them to that motor. So I'm going to give this a little bend like this. And we're going to flare one out like this. This one can be flared out like this. We're going to re-glue it to the board. Okay. So we can kind of reconfigure a little bit. So it's our ground reestablished. Now we gotta hook up another wire for our signal wire from our ESP board. So now we'll hook up our data line wire now. So we'll get another piece of wire and we will feed it through the hole. And we'll feed it around. So that's our data line. So to make sure that don't get pulled, we will secure it. I just realized I did something dumb. I put the buck converter on the outside. Needs to go on the inside. Dummy. So now we're connecting up with our power coming in, going through the buck converter, going back out, and then we got our data line that'll control our LED. That'll send all the info to the rotating arm. So we don't need this little LED blazing anymore. So we can chop him out. Okay, now we can put the top back on. We're done with that. So really the only, for those who don't follow along, really the only benefit that the button bar does now is the very left button. You can still turn the rotating arm on and off. Takes care of that. So now the next step is put our ESP board on. Spare bits. So now on our ESP board, we're going to be connecting our 5 volts, ground, and D2 pins. So the, of course, the 5 volts is obvious, the ground is obvious, and the D2 is our yellow wire. So that's our data out for our little board here. And this is a USB-C board here. So these came from Alice on eBay there. So the last board that I got, that I made an InfoGlobe, internet InfoGlobe for, it worked perfectly right out of the box. I didn't have to sit and wait and see if it was stable or unstable. So I'm gonna probably do a bad thing and just direct solder this to the board and hope that it's a stable one. So these are very fine holes. So that's our ESP board attached. So hopefully it's a stable one, but I'll have to wait for a little bit to program it, because now the next stage is to put brand new green LEDs, my super greens, on here. So that'll be the next segment. So now it's time to take these old LEDs and put brand new super greens. So now we'll put our brand new super green LEDs on. Of course, I want positive to the right side. I mean, left side of the display board. There's our positive side. So that little fleck on the left, and a little horseshoe thing with a little dot on the right. Okay, now we'll put everything back together. Okay, let's put this internet InfoGlobe back together and get some code into it and see if it works. Put the globe on temporarily. So I'll be taking both of these globes back apart, this green one and the smoke one of the unicorn, to polish up the globes so they look brand new. So now I can put some code in for testing. So I'll fire up my Arduino IDE. So I need to find my USB port. And see which one goes in and out. So I got 4 right now. So it looks like it found it, which is unusual. So now we're going to upload code. Meanwhile, I get the wall wart out. So it's done uploading. So this is going to be my code, and hopefully the gap time is fairly close. Well, we got connecting. It's officially an internet InfoGlobe. There's the time. So this does need a little adjustment. So this internet InfoGlobe was born on March 3rd. Of course, Jay, being that this is, a hackery of internet, of hacking in the internet globe, it's got a little Max Headwell in it. So it's going to have a couple of little stutters here and there, depending on the day and the time and the temperature and stuff like that in the house. So some days it may write everything perfectly, and then maybe the next minute it'll have a little hiccup, or it'll have a misspelled word, or a missing letter, or a missing number, or something like that. And especially when it comes to the weather summary, it might really get a little Max Headwell. So as long as you can tolerate that, otherwise this is way cooler than the regular InfoGlobes. Not as cool as the unicorns. Maybe someday we'll eventually get to making a unicorn into an internet InfoGlobe, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And on top of that, David hasn't been behind a computer in a couple of months now. He's decided to take 14 different jobs, and he's not playing with code. So there hasn't been any updates in almost 2.5 months, 3 months now as of this recording. So I got to do some timing adjusting to get the, especially that asterisk flashing perfect. But I'll work on getting the code perfect. And of course, when you get it, the only thing it'll say is ready for code. And then you'll have to email me, and then either I'll pass the code on to you, or you'll have to jump on the smartphone device or tablet, and we'll hook you up with the group on WhatsApp, so you can always ask questions or get the latest code when it does eventually come out. Because there is a couple of steps you have to set up the Arduino IDE. There's a couple of little hoops you gotta jump through. A couple of bits of software that need to be downloaded. But we'll guide you all through that, so that you can have your very own internet InfoGlobe. Of course, you'll have to set it up for your own parameters, such as your Wi-Fi network and password, and then your coordinates for your particular location, so that the weather can narrow in on your general area. And then if you want to get into the YouTube stats, you'll have to follow this, and it's all in the code when you open up the coding, it's all in descriptions of how to do it, how to set it up. So it's pretty easy if you can read. I know you can. And really the only tough part, and if you choose to enable it, is getting the your Amazon Echo, the secret little code and cookies and stuff like that to get it to work. So that's only for messages between Echo to Echo, where if you're upstairs and you want to call your wife downstairs and she's sitting next to the tea time cafe there, you can page that particular Echo, and then when that chimes up, it'll trigger this thing to say dinner's ready, or time to go to bed, or the cat wants to be petted. So this will have to run here for a couple of days so I can verify that this thing is cool and that it can go out, because it usually takes, I usually figure it out if it's within a day, that if I play around with the code, the timing, the gap time, it's probably a little off on this particular one, because I know mine and the other guy that I did, his code was spot on 993. So yours is still a little off, so it probably have to go up or down, and it'll be perfect. Well, max headroom, perfect. But we can play around and see what it does. So we can hook back up. So we can hook back up, and then we can come over here to the top. We can change. Let's try 992. It's either going to be 2 or 4. Of course, that green looks really good, especially on this particular green that I got. And of course, every time generally you want to always unplug, and for testing. So in case because I've had when I first set mine up, every time I left it plugged in, it seemed to run perfect. And then as soon as I unplugged it, it would go, sometimes it would go wacky. So right now it's already better, because the date is perfect now. So then the only other test I got to do with this thing is the long term, to see how it does over a couple of days. Usually within the second day I'll know whether this is a good ESP or a bad one. Because when I got when I had the bad ones, I bought a pack of 5 of these ESP boards off of Amazon, and would you believe it? The very first one that I plucked out of the package, it went to David B's, and that was the perfect out of the 5. The other 4, completely useless. I mean, the temperature changes in the room would throw the timing off, the gap time off all the time, and it would be, like in the morning it'd be perfect, but then as the hours went on during the day, it would go off, and then you try to chase it to find that perfect one, and it would never catch it. So one thing to make note, like I said, the weather summary and the weather alerts, since the messages are so long, it's very rarely it's going to write them perfectly every time. Usually what happens is that the thing glitches, and you'll get a couple of random characters and stuff like that. So. And then the other oddity with the summaries and the weather reports is depending on how the weather service writes up their report on the internet, because sometimes they'll put a crap ton of spaces and stuff like that, and these things they just have a hard time with spaces. So this thing is still not perfect yet. It's better, but I know it's good when that flashing part is all the X's and asterisks are perfect. Still a little off. So we can try, let's try going up. So 994. See what that does. And of course, this might be one of them situations where I might have to change ESP boards because maybe this ESP board may not be able to capture the timing perfect. Sometimes you got to change boards to get it to play nice. Because unfortunately, there's no like decimal points in the gap time. It's a whole number. So it's either going to be 994, 993, 992, 9991, or 995, 996. That's the way. Because if you try to put a decimal point in there, it won't take the code. It just reverts it back to the nearest code, a whole number. That's off. So 994 is way too much. So probably we'll try 991 because it shouldn't just kick out like that. Of course, the other thing is that I have to let it run on a particular gap time for a little while to see if it's stable. Because I know when I did this one up here, it was a little off to begin with, and then it must have warmed up, got happy, and then it was stable. But usually, when you watch the clock, because it is a live clock, and this is part of the setting too, where you can have the live clock. Usually, if that's stable and it's ticking away, counting up in time, it's usually a good indicator that you're pretty close. Now the only other thing I got to do is I got to put the new greens in mine, in my unicorn up there, because I haven't done it. I mean, I put all brand new LEDs in it, but at the time I did it, I didn't find them super greens. So everybody else that I've done a InfoGlobe for, or an internet InfoGlobe, has the new green LEDs. Except for David. David don't have the new LEDs. So only me and him have the old, new green. Because I had to do a lot of digging to find them greens on Mauser. Because you had to find the color temperature and the intensity of the green. I think I have that written down. Yeah, I have it written down here. So the standard greens, they're a 2 volt, and they have a 571 nm and a 35 MCP. And the MCP is the color, it's the shade of the color, and the higher the number, the more vivid it is. So the 35, that's the 35 up there, and it's kind of like, it's this factory color. So the super greens, they're a 3 volt LED, which I was kind of concerned about that they wouldn't receive enough voltage. So apparently it works. So they have a 515 nm, and that's down from the 571 nm of the standards. But the shade is a 700 compared to a 35. So that shade difference makes a big difference on these, especially on these. That green is just like in your face. Because I got your unicorn running over here in the background on a power bank, and every time that green pops up, I see the reflection of the bezel of the monitor, and it when that comes up, it's like, what was that? So far what I see here, I like it. I don't take a lot of priority in the weather summaries because I always know they're going to be a little stuttery. But as long as the basic information is stable, like the clock and the time and the temp and the date and the weather parameters like the dew point, the high, the low temp, and stuff like that, and the like for me the subscriber count and the views. So let me try. I haven't done this on video yet. Let me try to do a echo message. Of course, now I got to remember how I did that. Oh, it's the announce. Okay. So when you're on your Alexa app, of course you respond every time. When you write your message down, whatever you type, your assistant will announce it, and then it'll come up on here.
Michael. Hello, Jay. I am your new Internet InfoGlobes.
That was cool. And then once it's done displaying that, it'll go back to its regular scheduled programming. So this video has gone on long enough, so I'll hang back here and make sure this thing is pretty close on working. And if I have to, I might have to change ESP boards and then try again. So far what I see, it's pretty close. Of course, in a couple of hours, it might really tell me if it's good enough. So like I said, I don't pay attention to the weather summaries because they're always a little off. But that flashing part, if that's usually perfect all the way around the globe, then most likely I'll let it fly like that. So that's it for this video. Jay, I hope you enjoy your birthday present with your unicorn and now your new Internet InfoGlobe. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.